The largest budget in state history for 2025 came in at just over $53 billion. We are looking at the tax implications. Good Tuesday evening. I'm Tyler Lopez.
And I'm Janice Rebholz. There's more education spending, and with more gambling taxes, we have split reaction from local lawmakers as they react to the biggest budget ever. Selah Estelle with more details.
Illinois Senator and Democrat Dave Kaler says he voted for this budget and says one of his goals is growing in local businesses and attracting more industry to the state. He also adds that early childhood education is a top priority.
The evidence-based funding for our K through 12 schools, that represents now, since we've started it, more than $2 billion worth of increases for our most needed schools.
Senator Kaler adds that he was disappointed in the lack of mental health resources, criticizing ISU and says they're going backwards in that sector. We also spoke to Representative Travis Weaver, a Republican from Dunlap, and he was critical of the budget he voted against, especially the elimination of the state grocery tax and the increase in gambling taxes.
The grocery tax does not go towards Illinois' revenue. The grocery tax goes towards the revenue of local governments. So we have a governor, J.B. Pritzker, and does not have the appetite himself to cut spending necessary to cut taxes. So what does he do? He cuts a tax that Illinois doesn't collect. He cuts a tax that's collected by our local governments.
The grocery tax statewide goes away in 2026. Weaver feels first responders like firefighters could be impacted as that revenue stream ends. Selah Estelle, 25 News.